The problem with romantic attachments, especially for those of us who were hurt and neglected as kids, is that we feel so, attached. Ending a relationship can make it feel like you're dying. Even when you don't like the person, even when you don't want to be with a person, even when the person has been abusive to you, you'll start having thoughts of going back to them. And many of us have done that and wasted years of our lives unhappy and stuck, with someone we don't want to be with just because our attachment wounds can't bear the pain of leaving. Have you done that? My letter today is from a woman I'll call April, and she writes, "Dear Anna, I'd really appreciate your help working out whether what I'm feeling is just heartbreak or if it's something else." All right, I've got my fairy pencil. I'm going to go through and circle things I want to come back to on a second reading, but let's go through and see what's going on here. She says, "I'm 42 and I have a long history of unhealthy relationships. I've been doing therapy for the last few years and have also done a lot of work on myself by watching content like yours. Through this work, I've discovered that I'm fearful avoidant and that I have complex PTSD as a result of my childhood. My mother was and still is extremely controlling and volatile. We grew up watching her be abusive to my dad, who was completely checked out from family life and who feels like a stranger to me as he's so emotionally disconnected. My mom would switch between being all engulfing and then stonewalling or punishing us simply for being ourselves. We couldn't talk back to her, and there are many times in my life when I needed emotional support and she abandoned me or shamed me. She was very inconsistent. We were brought up with strict religious values to always be kind and have huge amounts of empathy for other people's problems. We weren't allowed to show anger or weakness, and our feelings were often dismissed. Whilst we received a lot of attention and care in the practical sense, there wasn't much affection. Our family was cut off from the outside world and very enmeshed, almost cult-like. As you can imagine, this has left me with a list of problems I'm working through, the main ones being anxiety and dissociation. Wow. I finally got the courage to come out as gay at 38, and after many successful relationships with men, met my second girlfriend just over a year ago. Things started off great. How many stories start like that, she says. Yeah, it's true. And I managed my own triggers well, not running away, even though I feel intensely fearful or enmeshed relationships and what they can take away from me. When my girlfriend needed space, I didn't cling to her and I kept my independence and insisted on taking things slow. I struggle with affection, but I came to really love how much my girlfriend would kiss and hug me. Now, you did tell me that you were fearful avoidant, and I want to address that because I see what you're saying. You really want the relationship, but you have this fear of getting engulfed by relationships. So fearful avoidant. So there's these attachment styles, and they're sort of arranged on the spectrum, where on one end, there's secure attachment. And those are people, they were parented beautifully, they get into relationships easily, they gradually attach, and it goes smoothly. On the other side of the spectrum is anxious attachment, anxious. And we can be anxious in different ways. One is avoidant, where we're just running away, can't deal with people, don't want to be in relationships, we end it at the drop of a hat. Or there's anxious insecure, which is trying to be together all the time. Look at me, pay attention to me. You don't love me, I'm scared. So that's clinging behavior. So that's a very common one. And then there's people who have a mix of those two, and that's called disorganized attachment or anxious avoidant, as our letter writer has described, where it goes back and forth between I'm scared you don't love me, I want to hold on, and then, oh, you're getting too close, I feel engulfed. Because it's going back and forth, it's very confusing for partners, and it can be really hard in relationships. It's the one that is the highest priority to work on so that you can have a good relationship. So you said about your girlfriend, she was very loyal and sweet. She told me from the start she wanted to be with me forever, and although I kept my head screwed on and questioned whether it was a bit love-bomby, yeah, maybe, I started to really open up to her. She would meet me off the bus and read to me in bed. She was great with my anxiety and was so supportive of my problems. We bought matching Christmas jumpers, went ice skating together, went on holiday and laughed through the 12-hour airport delay, and it was really a cute romance. After we'd known each other just over 6 months, we'd been out for a drink, and she suddenly stormed out of the bar. I couldn't work out what was wrong and followed her back to my home. When we were there, she shouted at me that she couldn't believe I hadn't given her a key to my apartment yet. She said I obviously didn't trust her and she was oblivious to her feelings. She said I obviously didn't trust her and I was oblivious to her feelings. She said that because I'd let my male friend live in my apartment several years ago in lockdown, it meant I didn't care about her as much as I cared about him. And when I stood my ground, she turned things back on me and said I'd humiliated her by forcing her to ask for the key and making her angry. Wow, okay. I was shocked that she could be so aggressive and manipulative, and it was a huge red flag, but I stayed in the relationship, keeping my boundaries, hoping it had just been a miscommunication. However, her jealousy only got worse, and the abuse started following a regular pattern. She constantly accused me of still wanting to be with men, saying I was lying to her and making men think I was easy if I talked to them. She started sexually shaming me, saying I should give her whatever she wanted because I'd allowed men to do things to me. Oof. Another time she raged at me for calling her by her own name and not a pet name, saying I was downplaying our relationship in front of my friends. None of this was deserved, although I'm sure it came from her triggers. During these attacks, I was very dissociated and found it hard to find many words to fight back, although I never allowed her to gaslight me and could always see that it was her problem. She had suffered serious childhood abuse, and I felt so sorry that she wasn't able to accept the love that we had. Of course, in between the abuse, there were lots of sweet moments and affection too. After 13 months and after the final abusive incident, I ended the relationship and went no contact. I knew it wasn't healthy to stay in a toxic cycle or be codependent with her. That was a month ago, and the recovery has been very hard. I had severe panic attacks at first, and I felt ill and depressed, like I was on the brink of a breakdown. The cognitive dissonance between the two sides of the relationship is insane. I put all my self-care into practice, allowing myself to feel sad, but not being limerent or wallowing or looking at old photos, processing my feelings through writing, and not reaching out to my now ex, even if I really wanted to. I'm lucky enough to have great friends, and I know I've done the right thing. But the pain and sickness I feel is intense. I still love my ex-girlfriend despite everything, and I feel like for 5 minutes I had something truly beautiful which was taken away. I don't know how I'm going to recover from it and the sense of loss that I'll never see her again. I feel like it was my job to love her and I abandoned her, even though I know that it's an unhealthy thought. I'm proud of the way I handled the relationship, the breakup and the aftermath, but the pain I feel, I can't logic out, even though I know it's illogical. I've never felt like this before. In past breakups, I've felt self-loathing because my ego has been wounded. Or I've taken a victim position and stayed with or rebounded back to toxic people. Or I've dismissed people fairly easily when I eventually grew tired of them hurting me. Now I feel like all my old protection mechanisms are gone. I've tried to behave in a mature and healthy way, and to be honest, it hurts like hell. Is this what normal heartbreak feels like? And do I feel this way because I allowed myself to be truly emotionally vulnerable, or another reason? How do I heal it, and how long will it take? I'm feeling my feelings, and I don't like them at all. Thank you, she says. April. All right, April. Yeah, you know what? I'm the wrong person to ask what normal is, but I think what you're feeling is normal. And it's only been a month. And I heard an equation once, and this is so rough, and it doesn't apply to everything, obviously, but somebody said the pain lasts about half as long as the relationship lasted. All right, now obviously there's exceptions, and if you were with somebody for 30 years, I hope it's not 15 years to get over. But when we're in the sort of early digits there, it is something like that. And so an attachment occurred, and I think the fact that there's more emotion involved could be a good sign for you. I don't think it's mad to to still have feelings for somebody who you had that attachment with. And the thing is, when somebody is, what's going on here is it sounds like it was in the early stages of creating a trauma bond, which is where somebody is being really nice and then really mean and then really nice and really mean. And even animals will become helplessly attached to that type of treatment. It's something involuntary for us. I consider it a glitch in our brain that we will attach even more strongly to somebody who blows hot and cold with us than we will to somebody who's consistently warm to us. So in the long run, of course, the bond with a warm person is right, but somebody who's going back and forth, it messes with you. And it can cause a premature and overly strong attachment. So this is one of the reasons what I advise people who have attachment wounds in dating is to go very slowly, only because if you can delay getting attached to them, and by attached, I'll tell you what I'm talking about, sex. Sex accelerates the attachment. And if you have attachment wounds, then all the sort of, problems that tend to come for any of us around attachment are going to show up. So if you actually have formed a relationship with somebody where you have some basis of knowing where they're coming from, you know whether you can trust them, you had a chance to see their yucky side and see, is it something that you can deal with? Now, it's an interesting case, and I'm hoping that the therapists and, people with clinical expertise in this in the audience can weigh in a little bit in the comments, like what was going on with that girlfriend? How did she get 6 months without this showing, without this really, dark side of her jealousy and controlling nature come out? Yeah, what a shock that must have been. What a shock that must have been. So I advise everyone who I teach around dating, I just advise them, go slow. And before you even begin dating, get very clear what you need. Because red flags are kind of easy to sort of ignore if you haven't been clear with yourself what you consider a problem. And so, many people have heard my story. I ended up with somebody who was smoking heroin every day for months, and I didn't know. And I don't know how I didn't know, because there were so many things that were like messed up in that relationship and not true and weird and dodgy, but I was kind of glossing over them. And later in my life, when I learned to be very clear, one of the things that I got very clear about is I cannot be with somebody with a drug problem. I cannot do that even more than your average person can't do that, because I had such a history already of having a blind spot and having my life just wrecked by any involvement with such people. And so especially at the point, where I was a mom with kids, I could not have that again. And so I had to use special guardrails. And one of those guardrails is to get very clear, like what do I tend to be weak around? Where does bad stuff get into my relationships, or people who are unavailable or abusive, or I'm not into them or they're not into me? How will I spot the signs of that? You could go ahead and treat yourself to careful thought before you're dating and write it down, like, these are the signs that I would be looking for. This is how soon in a relationship that I would be asking questions about this and seeing, are we on the same page about this? And there's no other way to see what somebody's dark side is except through time. And over time, if their dark side is obvious, yeah, you'll see it on the first date. But what if it takes a while? What if it takes a while for you to see this hard side? And then the second thing is, once somebody has acted out in that way, how do they talk about it? Are they able to acknowledge it? Is there any hope? And those of us with attachment wounds can tend to see hope where there is no hope, or see, we can sort of we're very, very good at seeing the potential of people, and we fall deeply in love with their potential, and then we're frustrated all the time with who they actually are, and we're not really okay. We got all, into this relationship with somebody we don't actually accept. But we have to start recovering our perception that may have been damaged by trauma in the past. So that's how we do it. In my dating course, the very first exercise is to get clear about what you want in your life and then in a partner. And you'd be surprised how many people really struggle with this exercise, because they've been glossing over it for so long that it's hard for them to even say what they want. Like, everything that they could name sounds like too much to ask. That's what trauma does to us, my friends. So we start to get clear, honestly, what it is. And then when we date, we can very quickly tell when somebody doesn't hit the bar. Red flags become more visible. The other thing that you need to accelerate your healing in this area is you need tools. You need some system that you're in, whether you're getting it through a therapist or getting it through my dating course or my dating coaching programs, but something that, there's a system. There are 12-step programs for relationship troubles too, by the way. And that's a system. The 12-step program is a system. You need a system that walks you through recognizing your problem and then starting to, chip away at it so that you can change and to be honest with yourself. It's very difficult. And what really helps to be honest with ourselves about it, because that's essential, is to have friends who are walking that path with us. Trusted people, not people we're dating, not people we would like to date, but peers on the healing path with us who understand what we're doing, who we can say, I'm going on a date. I want to meet this person. I really want to give it time. I don't want to go rushing in again. You can set up your own parameters, and friends can help you with that. And you can help them with their parameters. And it's wonderfully powerful when people help each other. We're not that good at figuring this out by ourselves, us traumatized people. But together we can do much better. But you do have to be selective about who you let into your, advice council, so to speak. You have to be careful who you let in. Do you share the same values? Are they people who simply blame other people for all their problems? Or are they people who, like you when you're healing, really want to look at your own patterns and work on those and change them so that you can get different results in relationships, possibly with a whole different type of person? Trauma does a number on the way that we date and perceive love and handle all these things. There are some very common signs that this has happened. And if you'd like to see a list that I have of common signs that trauma is affecting your romantic life, you can download my list. It's a free PDF. It's right here. And I will see you very soon.